as alleged comments made by a major Conservative donor continued yesterday as further allegations emerged.
Sunak, of course, facing mounting pressure to hand that money back, donated by Frank Hester and his healthcare firm. This was how it sort of descended to a bit of sort of schoolboy point scoring at PMQs yesterday. Have a watch or a listen.
Mr. Speaker, the man bankrolling the Prime Minister also said that the member for Hackney North should be shot.
Shame.
How low would he have to sink? What racist, woman-hating threat of violence would he have to make before the Prime Minister plucked up the courage to hand back the £10 million that he's taken from him?
Mr. Speaker, I'm absolutely not going to take any lectures from somebody who chose to represent an anti-Semitic terrorist group, Hizb ut-Tahrir, who chose to serve a leader who let anti-Semitism run rife in this Labour Party. Those are his actions, those are his values, and that's how he should be judged.
Wow.
Well, we're joined now by the Spectator's diary reporter Lucy Dunn and former Home Office Minister Norman Baker. Lucy, should Rishi Sunak hand the money back?
Well, this is the big question now, and it's not even just about handing the money back, but it's about accepting more donations in the future. And we've seen from the Scottish Conservatives up north, they've definitely been quite strong about this, saying that they absolutely should not take any more donations. We've seen Lord Hague talk about this as well, and there's definitely been quite a lot of split within the Tory party about exactly how to deal with this going forward. And certainly there's worries as well about cancellation, of trying to sort of say that, well, this guy said something bad, and now we then have to go back and undo all the stuff he's done beforehand. And certainly that conversation is coming more and more to the fore.
I think it's really interesting, a point that Nicola made yesterday, and I'm going to put it to you, Norman. Whether we go back or we don't, we need to look forward. I gave an example yesterday that went down like a lead balloon. In 2018, Jeremy Corbyn received £500,000 from Max Mosley, OK? He'd written a document saying that illegal migrants are responsible for some terrible, terrible things. He criticised him, didn't give the money back. I'm not making a political point there. I'm making a point for the future. Should donations to all political parties be under greater scrutiny, Norman?
Well, there's a very wide point there, but actually the whole system of funding political parties is wrong. And in my view, it should be linked to the membership numbers of a political party. And you cannot have a situation we have at the moment where individuals with massive wealth can effectively buy the morality of a political party, which is what Frank Hester was doing.
Well, I'm going to pick you up on something. Well, not pick you up, I'm going to throw something else into the mix. We talk about political morality. Let's look at what the SNP did in Scotland. They got a huge, huge membership who paid their fees to join, to get independence, and without pointing the finger at anybody, because legally we can't. What an absolute debacle that's turned into. If I was a Scottish person who paid to join the SNP, I would be raging, be it about all the allegations that have been made. So it can work in all directions, can it not?
But then presumably the members would no longer fund that same
No,
party,
absolutely.
whereas under the current, under the Tory parties we're talking here, the biggest donors are going to give to the parties who ultimately create legislation that means presumably they pay less tax, or makes life easier for them.
Why is Frank Hester giving the Tories so much money? Because she wants influence. She wants influence on the policy direction of the Conservative Party. Should one person have that? 21% of the Tories' money last year came from Frank Hester. That's a huge amount. Given back, I think you should give it to charity. Not give it back to him.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of money. Give the money to charity.
I think Norman's got a point there, Lucy, but also what's more important here, the fact that the Tories have taken £10 million from Frank Hester, or the fact that they have also given him £400 million worth of government contracts in the past 8 years.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think the point about influence is very interesting here. And certainly we did see the Tory party in a very difficult situation over the past couple of days. Their changing stance in the situation has gone from essentially declining to comment in the first place, in the first instance, to now Rishi Sunak saying, well, these comments are wrong. And certainly we actually see parallels a little bit with how the Tory party dealt with what Lee Anderson had said. They eventually came out and said these comments are wrong, but we were going to make our judgment depending on whether or not he apologises. And so now he's done the apology.
The problem is, and I've become a fierce critic of Rishi Sunak because I think he's out of his depth. He spends most of his days, Norman, batting off so many divisions in his party that presumably every decision he takes, he's trying to please left, right, middle, centre, back, whatever. And that is, in essence, actually, it did to you, actually. I mean, that people say, oh, it's very difficult as a victim of circumstance. He wanted the damn job. He was the one who brought down Boris Johnson. I'm not saying that, but I mean, Boris Johnson won the election. I'm not complimenting what Boris Johnson did at the end. This wasn't Rishi Sunak's gig, and it's come back and bitten him on the backside, hasn't it?
Well, he's trying to please everyone, and in doing so, pleasing absolutely no one, really. I think that's his massive problem, and that's something that's going to follow him until the general election. He is ultimately a Prime Minister without a vision, without a straightforward plan, and is really struggling to pick up not even just the sort of red wall voters that Boris Johnson took back in 2019, but he's really struggling to pick up even his own core voter base, and a lot of them are going rightwards.
I want to come back on the point that was made a moment ago about influence, which is terribly important. Let's just not forget all those PPE contracts. Yeah. Billions of pounds of PPE contracts given to Tory friends for stuff that didn't work half the time and which has never been recovered, that particular money. And there's an unhealthy relationship between people who give money for the Tory party and government contracts which are given out. This government is morally bankrupt. So when it comes forward with things like definitions on extremism, we have to look at it through those eyes of who's actually giving out those definitions. Because this isn't neutral. These are people who've got their agenda, are clinging to power, who are bankrupt of ideas and are trying to stave off the day when the general election comes. That's who's doing all this.
And Gove was on the government round this morning. He did an interview with our sister station at Times Radio. He was asked about Frank Hester's comments and whether those comments could actually be considered to be extremist under Michael Gove's very own definition of the word. And he said, different people will have different views.
Yes, exactly. And ministers are going to decide exactly which groups should be banned. And by ministerial decree, not by vote of Parliament, and no automatic appeal except through a very long judicial process in the court, which will take a lot of money and many months to go through. This is, you know, he wants to stop people who undermine liberal democracy. He's doing that. Has he not noticed the irony of that? He's doing that. He's undermining democracy by these sorts of measures.
So what would you do about the fanatics and the extremists?
Well, there are laws in place. The police...
But why are... Nobody will answer this question. We've been here 2.5 hours. Why are those people not being dealt with by the police then? Is it because the police are allowed... We talked, didn't we, about idea. Are they defining it in their own way? Surely there must be measures, are they? There must be measures that say, if you behave like that, if you're not somebody who's marching peacefully, but you're doing this, you should be arrested. Why?
But doing what?
Well, exactly,
inciting what? By their language, inciting hatred, exciting feelings. Lucy, why aren't the police arresting these people? That's what I don't get.
I think with this whole conversation, especially with the extremism definition out today, the reality is it's very, very difficult to say, well, this is criminal, this is not criminal but wrong, and then what do you do about the things that are not criminal but wrong? And I suppose that's ultimately what this is all about, and we're trying to crack down on this, but it's really, really difficult because in many ways the more that you broaden up this definition, the more groups will be taken in, and in many ways wrongly sometimes.
And we're listening to a Prime Minister who initially is saying, oh, that's wrong but it's not Islamophobic, or that's wrong but it's not racist, and then is saying it's racist. It's like, yeah, we're talking semantics here, but there has to be some clear leadership so that, for example, the police can police properly and understand...
But he's not allowed to tell the police. I'm completely with you. He's not allowed to tell the police.
Neither should he be allowed. We can't have politicians...
Well, are the police doing enough, in your mind?
Well, the police have the laws to enforce.
Are they enforcing the laws enough?
I think to a large degree they are. Lucy?
I think when you do see certain circumstances, certain situations, I think that are reported through the papers, absolutely, I think there could be more that's done. But I think the police themselves are also in this difficult situation.
Everybody's hamstrung,
not getting the right guidance themselves.
Well, look, Jonathan Hall, who's the independent advisor on state legislation for terrorism, has this morning said that he's very worried about Michael Gove's definition and that it's criminalising thought rather than criminalising action. And that's a very important distinction because we're moving towards George Orwell's thought crime, where people who have particular ideas are arrested rather than people who commit
No, I want people arrested for action, not for thought.
Exactly. So do I.
You educate thought. You don't educate action. Isn't that right?
I totally agree with that, but that's not what Michael Gove has got. That's not the road he's going.
No, I'm not complimenting Gove, but I want to know why the people that are carrying out the actions are still free to do that. I don't understand. We're saying the police are supposed to do it. The government can't tell the police what to do. Are they defining it themselves, the police?
It's that grey area between thought and action, which is speech, right? And I think we've got very clear laws in the UK that somebody can say something, you've got right to freedom of speech, but there's not freedom of consequence by any means. And if you are promoting hate speech,
that's right.
then that is a crime. But then there's that argument of what constitutes hate speech and what one group might...
God, this country's on its back.
Well, what one group might consider to be hateful, another group might say, well, no, it's not. We talk about the from the river to the sea phrase, for example. On one side, they say, no, this is a call for Palestinian liberation. The other side, no, this is calling for the eradication of the Jews.
Yeah.
And therein lies the issue, right?
I think also ultimately it's like who decides these definitions, who draws the lines here, and that's going to change depending on who's in charge too.
Going to clear up. Just very, very quickly before we go, separate but sort of associated. Lots of Diane Abbott's Labour colleagues out of the woodwork this morning, Lucy, saying she should be welcomed back to the party. A year ago banned. She apologised for anti-Semitic comments straight away. Starmer can't really put the two together, though, can he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately, you know, there can be two wrongs that exist in tandem at the same time. Obviously, the comments that are made by Hester are completely abhorrent about Diane Abbott. At the same time, she was also in the wrong when she wrote that letter. And I think that investigation has to continue. It has to run its full course. And then ultimately, after that, if the Labour Party feel that she can be welcomed back, that's the time. I think
for a man who's absolutely desperate to prove that the Labour Party isn't anti-Semitic, he's not going to let her back in.
That's why he did it. Look, I mean, Diane Abbott's comments were wrong, but I think the sanction of taking a whip away was extreme in her particular case, and she's been treated badly. She should be let back in, irrespective of what Frank Hester has said, in my view. And the other thing to say on the record, Jeremy, is this. What on earth was the Speaker doing yesterday?
Well, listen, you lot have stuck up for him. I thought that was disgraceful. I don't agree with almost anything that Diane Abbott says. But if she cannot go to the House of Commons as an elected MP, whether she's tied to a party or an independent, she tried to speak 46 times on a debate about herself.
Yes.
Lindsay Hoyle's not... He's not... And 10 days ago, he was talking about what, MPs, as we said earlier, who are facing threats. Well, she got told she should be shot.
Yeah, he's losing...
And I am not a Diane Abbott fan, but he's not doing... He's in a bit of a pickle, isn't he?
He's losing the plot, to be honest with you. I mean, he lost the plot with the SNP ceasefire, he's now losing it with Diane Abbott.
Yeah, he's not had a good couple of weeks, and it was very poor judgment yesterday, I think, not to let Diane Abbott speak.
Thanks, guys. Really, really good. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Lucy Dunn from The Spectator and former Home Office Minister Norman Baker.